with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. There's never been a more interesting but also critical time in British politics, and I can't wait to bring you the biggest stories of the day with the best factual accuracy and also a few of my own opinions thrown in. We'll engage in passionate but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12 on TV, on radio and online.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something weird happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak.
Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
On Mark Dolan Tonight, in regards to the World Cup, we've got Big Sam Allardyce live on the show. In my big opinion, is Rishi Sunak risking a Brexit betrayal with rumoured plans for a Switzerland-type deal? Do this and the Tories are toast forever. My Mark Meets guest is Brexit-supporting former Labour MP John Mann. He's live in the studio after 10. This is the man that took on and defeated Jeremy Corbyn. In the big question, are the Tories facing an existential crisis? We'll debate that with former Tory government minister Anne Widdecombe and ex-UKIP MEP Godfrey Bloom. And in the news agenda with my brilliant panel, are Labour right to scrap the House of Lords? Was comedian Joe Lycett wrong to shred £10,000 in cash during a cost of living crisis for a stunt? And can you trust a man who wears shorts in the winter? Lots to get through. And don't forget, Big Sam Allardyce live on the programme. But my big opinion follows the headlines with Rhiannon Jones.
Oh dear, Mark, my husband wears shorts in the winter. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB Newsroom, your top stories. The 2022 FIFA World Cup kicked off today with the host Qatar beaten 2-0 by Ecuador. It's the first time the tournament's been held in a Muslim country in the Middle East, and the build-up's been overshadowed by a number of controversies. FIFA's hoping the action on the pitch will turn the spotlight back on the football. But England manager Gareth Southgate has confirmed his players will take the knee ahead of their World Cup opener against Iran tomorrow. Meanwhile, the Football Association's trying to get clarification over whether captains will be booked if they wear the One Love armband. 9 countries, including England and Wales, had planned to wear it to promote diversity and inclusion. Wales kicks off their campaign tomorrow against the USA in their first World Cup appearance in 64 years. Captain Gareth Bale says he hopes his team's achievement will inspire a generation. Well, GB News spoke to Welsh fans in Qatar about what it means to them.
It's crazy. I mean, 64 years and we've finally made it in. I feel like this is one of our last opportunities, really, of this, taking the most out of this generation of players, so really excited.
Do you ever think you'd see this day?
No.
I've never felt prouder to be Welsh and be here.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can't. Yeah, we hope, though, that we really do hope that Wales do beat England.
It wasn't a great start for the fans. Around an hour ahead of kick-off tonight, there were chaotic scenes at the FIFA Fan Festival. The venue can hold up to 40,000 people, but at least double tried to gain access. And for a while, organisers were letting too many into a holding area. It took police around an hour to get frustrated supporters back out of the venue. Police in Nottingham have launched a murder investigation after 2 children were killed in a fire at a flat they say was started deliberately. Fire and rescue were called to an address at Fairall Close in Clifton in the early hours of this morning. The children, aged 1 and 3, were treated at the scene for smoke inhalation, but later died in hospital. A woman in her 30s remains in a critical condition. In the US, 5 people have been killed and 18 injured in a shooting at a gay nightclub in Colorado Springs. Police have named the suspect as 22-year-old Anderson Lee Aldrich. He's currently in custody and receiving treatment for his injuries. The motive for the attack isn't yet known. The deputy police chief has thanked clubgoers for risking their own lives trying to stop the attacker, calling them heroic. TV online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Mark Dolan tonight.
Many thanks, Rhiannon, and congratulations to your husband who wears shorts in the winter. He's clearly got a lovely pair of pins. Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. In just 1 minute's time, in my big opinion, is Rishi Sunak risking a Brexit betrayal with a rumoured plan for a Switzerland-type deal? Do this and the Tories are toast forever. In the big question, following a budget in which taxes have risen to the highest levels since the 1940s, are the Conservatives facing an existential crisis? We'll debate that with former Tory government minister Anne Widdecombe and ex-UKIP MEP Godfrey Bloom. My Mark Meets guest is Brexit-supporting former Labour MP John Mann. He opposed Jeremy Corbyn and has quite the story to tell as he now sits in the House of Lords. He's live in the studio after 10. What a great guy. In the news agenda with my panel, are Labour right to scrap the House of Lords? And was comedian Joe Lycett wrong and irresponsible to shred £10,000 during a cost of living crisis as part of an online stunt? And can you trust a man who wears shorts in the winter? It's good enough for my brilliant local postman, Steve, but do you get your pins out in the cold weather? Let me know, mark at gbnews.uk. With me throughout the show, reacting to all of the big stories of the day, we have Emma Webb, UK Director of the Common Sense Society, Britain's longest-serving political editor, and the man with quite the best legs in Fleet Street, Nigel Nelson, and former Gurkha officer and best-selling author Adrian Hayes. Now, I want to hear from you throughout the show. Mark at gbnews.uk. The best part of the programme is when you get in touch. And this programme has a golden rule. Do you know what that rule is? Faye, are you ready? We don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it. So there you go. Well done, Faye. Much quicker than Sebastian. For the next 2 hours, we've got big debates, big guests, and always big opinions. And don't forget, Big Sam Allardyce live on the programme before 10, talking about the World Cup. But let's start with this. Why is Brexit important? Because people voted for it. That's how democracy works. How shocking, therefore, that a Conservative government that delivered the will of the people and got Brexit done should be the ones to potentially reverse it. The Sunday Times, in a brilliant piece of journalism, report that senior government figures are planning to put Britain on the path towards a Swiss-style relationship with the European Union. Switzerland has access to the European single market through a series of bilateral agreements. However, the model also involves more liberal EU migration and payments to the EU budget. Sound familiar? With the bloc in recent years also pushing for the European Court of Justice to have greater oversight in the Swiss-EU relationship. Even the free movement of people is not off the table. Far be it from me to raise the alarm about what looks like a subtle and insidious attempt to get us back into the bloc by using the snake oil language of unfettered access and frictionless trade. Not everything that glitters is gold, and it's very much the view of the godfather of Brexit himself, the man who really moved the dial in those negotiations with Brussels, Lord David Frost. He's not having it. Last night, as reported by the Sunday Times, he said any approach requiring the UK to align with EU rules to get trade benefits, whether as part of a Swiss-style approach or any other, would be quite unacceptable. He goes on, Boris Johnson and I fought very hard to avoid any such requirements in 2020 and ensure the UK could set its own laws, and we should not contemplate giving this away in the future. What a hero. Unlike many Remainers, in 2016, I instantly accepted the result, as any Democrat should. And it seems like I've got a better idea of how Brexit works, even better than many Brexiteers, including the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who appears to be wobbling on this issue. Well, he needs to give his head a wobble. If the PM reverses Brexit by stealth in this way, the Tories won't just be out of power for a generation, they will be finished altogether. Sunak will be sunk. Rishi will be swimming with the fishies. The whole point of Brexit is you go hard or you go home. It's all or nothing. Brexit is about control of our money, our borders, our courts and our trade. You can't have a half Brexit in the same way that you can't be half pregnant or half drunk. If we're going to do Brexit, it's got to be the whole thing. The big kahuna, the full English, a full-fat, red-blooded, carnivorous Brexit. Not Brexit in name only, which makes a mug of anyone that voted for it, and which dilutes the colossal opportunities that Brexit brings. I've been willing to tolerate Thursday's particularly unconservative budget, which will deepen the recession, in the hope that the tough economic medicine currently being administered now will facilitate tax cuts and a more competitive economy in the medium to long term. I know many Conservative supporters hated the autumn statement, and they felt that it could have come from the pen of Keir Starmer. But fiscal prudence is enough of a selling point to keep me on board at this stage. But I'm not having a Brexit U-turn, because this is about the only thing the Tories can hang on to as their support collapses across the country. They were at least the party to get us out. But if they renege on this and allow Britain to sleepwalk back into the bosom of Brussels, they will be out too. Out of sorts, out of order, and out of power. EU turn if you want to. This presenter's not for turning. I'll swallow that budget on Thursday if it delivers for the economy, but I'm not having a Brexit U-turn. What's your view? Mark at gbnews.uk. You go hard or you go home. That's my view. Let me know your thoughts, especially if you disagree. Reacting to my big opinion and all of the big stories of the day, we have Emma Webb, UK Director of the Common Sense Society, former Gurkha officer and best-selling author Adrian Hayes, and Britain's longest-serving political editor Nigel Nelson. Emma Webb, let me welcome you back to the show. What's your reaction to this? We've heard the snake oil language of frictionless trade, but I'm not buying it. I smell a rat.
Amen to everything that you have said, Mark, other than the fact that I'm much, much more pessimistic about that budget. I think they're using the economic situation to try and justify this by suggesting that we may need to give away some of our sovereignty and accept some EU laws in return for the slight economic benefits of having frictionless trade with the EU. I think it's a complete joke. I think that Jacob Rees-Mogg was absolutely right when he said that this is Brexit without the teeth, but instead of having the teeth, they haven't even replaced it with dentures. I think that this is absolutely appalling. I think the Conservative Party are so far off the rails that I don't even recognise them anymore. I think this is devastating, and many people around the country will be looking at this with the hairs on the back of their necks standing up, feeling frankly quite sick at what it seems they're trying to do, because it feels as if they're trying to really screw everybody over.
Adrian Hayes, the government will argue they're doing everything they can to boost the British economy, and if that involves fewer trade barriers with the EU, then bring it on. That's their view. What do you think?
My views on Brexit really mirror Mervyn King's views about 4 years ago in the May government when they were discussing which way Brexit was going to go. And King said there were advantages in staying in the EU and there were advantages in leaving. But there was no point forsaking the advantages of staying in without maximising the advantages of leaving. And I think 4 years on, we've lost all the advantages, which I think, let's expand a bit, the trade deals with the EU. But all the supposed benefits of leaving, you said in your monologue, sovereignty, money, courts, borders, immigration, we have done nothing. Why have we done nothing? That's for people's opinion. So I'm sort of now, I'll be honest, sort of on the fence. However, having said that, it's what we did vote for. But we either do it, as you said in your monologue, you either do it properly and get all those advantages, or because what's happened in the meantime, because we've plundered 400 billion on a certain lockdown, and so trade has perhaps evened up the balance, and we do need to maximise our trade benefits in any way we can. So I don't blame, but it does go against what people voted for and what the government promised. But when has this government U-turned on any promises?
Nigel Nelson, Number 10, has said no customs union, no single market. Has this story been mischaracterised, or are Brexiteers rightly concerned?
No, I think that this is a deliberate leak by Number 10. I'm not quite sure how it got out there, but I've seen these things happen before. It's floating an idea without putting any fingerprints on it. So you had Steve Barclay on the TV this morning who said that he didn't recognise the story. Now, that's a minister's code for no one's told me about it, but it could well be happening. So what I think Number 10 are up to is they wanted to throw it out there. They want to see what the reaction might be and spark debates like this one. If it goes against them, it'll be quietly forgotten. If it looks like it might have legs, they will gradually bring it forward. And as far as the actual deal itself goes, that you just said that you lost the argument like I did back in 2016. So what we've got to do is embrace Brexit. Problem is that the oven-ready deal that Boris Johnson promised is actually pretty half-baked. And what we've got to find now is some way of getting Brexit done, especially when it comes to Northern Ireland. So in the event that we could find a way of making the rules common across the whole UK, that's effectively being back in the single market, that would solve your Northern Ireland problem.
Indeed, but that, of course, is a non-starter. What do you think about this, Emma? Number 10 are just flying a kite.
Well, I hope that the reaction will sink it. I think it's possible that that's what they're doing, and I know that this is something that does happen. But I think all the more reason for people to be very, very clear that this is just simply not an acceptable suggestion. I also think that under the current circumstances, given the budget that has just been announced, the fact that there will be some people, for example, graduates who, in paying back their student loans, will overall be taxed at 51%, that this Conservative Party is not looking recognisable to many of those people who lent, to use Boris Johnson's language, lent the Conservative Party their vote in 2019. I think they're starting to look unrecognisable, and I think that the British public need to be very, very clear that these things that are fundamentally unconservative are also completely unacceptable.
Adrian Hayes, briefly, if you can, when are we going to have a Prime Minister that's serious about delivering the opportunities that Brexit presents?
We're still waiting. Quick answer. Look, I think, as Emma said, that the Conservative Party, whatever your politics, is not representative of what it promised to be, what it used to be. And as I said, I just think, just take one aspect of Brexit, controlling our borders. We've had, let alone illegal immigrants crossing the Channel, which gets all the publicity. Where is the 300,000, the size of a medium-sized city in the UK, coming to the UK every year? So we've got free movement of people in practice. So I personally don't see much difference actually joining a Swiss-style arrangement where we're going to have free movement of people officially. But as you say, we just don't have that Prime Minister. And I'm going to hopefully speak a bit later, but a Prime Minister with courage. We've got cowards in government, and I think the opposition as well. We've got politicians who are lacking the balls to actually make hard decisions in all walks of political life.
Lord David Frost, if you're watching, your country needs you. Seriously, deposit this guy in a safe Tory seat and let him rescue Brexit. What's your view, Mark, at gbnews.uk? Fabulous panel tonight. They'll be back at 10:30 reacting to the papers, of course, which are already looking pretty explosive. And we'll get their reaction to a range of news agenda topics as well throughout the show. So many great talking points tonight. Can't wait for that. Are Labour right to scrap the House of Lords is something we'll be discussing. Was comedian Joe Lycett wrong to literally shred £10,000 during a cost of living crisis as part of a stunt? And can you trust a man who wears shorts in the winter? I do. Is that naughty? After 10, my Mark Meets guest is Brexit-supporting former Labour MP Lord John Mann, who conducted a war against Jeremy Corbyn and won. And don't forget, Big Sam Allardyce before 10 talking about the World Cup. But next up, are the Tories facing an existential crisis? We'll be asking Godfrey Bloom and Anne Widdecombe. See you shortly.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other pay-per-review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for the briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, the briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
Big Sam Allardyce with us shortly to talk about the World Cup. England playing tomorrow, but also, come on Wales. Seriously, I'll be so happy if either England or Wales win the World Cup. We can but dream. Before we get to that, big response to my big opinion monologue. Steve says, Mark, I for one love this Brexit pullback because it will usher in a new party who will deliver Brexit and rid this country of woke and scrounging boat people. It is coming. Strong words from Steve there. We'll discuss a potential new party destroying the Tories very shortly. How about Alan, who says, Mark, I'm so angry at the government already that if they sell out on Brexit, it will be the first time in my life I would take to the streets in revolt. We need to get rid of these cowardly turncoats. Angela, dear Mark, Europe should be trying to give us the best deal as we import more from them than we export. So the PM stealthily moving us back into the EU is both immoral and unnecessary. Mark, you're right. This will destroy the Tory party. We, as lifelong Tory voters, will never vote for them again. Angela, not happy, not pulling her punches. Alan, with just a few words, says, Mark, Brexit, in 4 words, in fact, treasonous, treacherous, traitorous Tories in the back pockets of globalists. You go on, the anger is palpable, and we'll get some more of your thoughts very shortly. Mark at gbnews.uk. It's time now for this. Yes, it's time for the big question in which we tackle a major news story of the day. Tonight, with an inability to get on top of illegal migration, having presided over the woke takeover of our institutions, and having just inflicted the highest tax rises since the 1940s, are the Conservatives facing an existential crisis? To debate this, I'm delighted to welcome former Tory government minister and best-selling author Anne Widdecombe, who joins us every Sunday at 9:20, I'm delighted to say, and an old friend of the show, former UKIP MEP and political commentator Godfrey Bloom. Godfrey, do the Tories face potential extinction?
It's almost impossible to think that they can continue in this manner. The highest taxation since the war. The Conservatives have traditionally been in favour of small business, low regulation, the small businessman and all this kind of thing, and they've abandoned it. It's quite clear now that Rishi Sunak takes his instructions from Klaus Schwab at the WEF. Screamingly obvious now to even rural Tories, who are probably just about the most stupid people on the planet. And we have Hunt, who, as Chancellor of the Exchequer, who was rejected by the Conservative Party, rejected by the membership. So we've got these two characters actually in charge who aren't Conservatives at all. These people are simply not Conservatives. We have a supine mainstream media, and we have backbenchers who are simply cowards. It's frightened to actually speak out. And when Rishi Sunak said a couple of days ago that he can't stop the Dover invasion overnight. Well, let me put it this way, Mark. I bloody well could. I'd mobilise the Royal Navy and I'd tow the buggers back. Of course it can be done overnight. These people are just bloody useless.
Anne Widdecombe, you left the Conservatives and you were a member of the Brexit Party and a Brexit Party MEP. Do you think that a smaller party of the right could be a threat to the Tories?
I think that if they really do go down this route to reverse Brexit, which is effectively what it is, if they really do go down that route, I think they're just flying, a kite at the moment to see what happens. But if they do go down that route, then I think they are certainly done for at the next election. And I think there could then be a whole question about the future of the Tories. Now, small parties in this country and general elections do not do well. Even when they're of the level of importance of the SDP, if you remember back in the 80s when you had huge figures and everybody said, yes, this is it, this is a sea change in British politics. No, it wasn't. Because come a general election, everybody is asking themselves one question. They're not asking who do they want. They're asking who they don't want. And that was why the Brexit Party couldn't make any headway in the last general election, for the simple reason that people were saying, can't risk letting Corbyn in, therefore must vote for the Conservatives. So I don't think that any time in the near future we're going to see a small party usurp the Conservative position. But I think after the next election, that threat could become bigger.
However, Anne, smaller parties of the right, the Heritage Party, UKIP, Reform UK, don't they risk diluting the votes on the right and diluting the Tory support and gifting Keir Starmer number 10, which is surely the worst scenario for any Conservative supporter?
Well, as I've just said, the mere fact that small parties don't do well in elections means that, frankly, it doesn't much matter if there are 506 small parties.
But Anne, UKIP or Reform UK could stop Tories winning seats in marginal constituencies.
Yes, hang on, let me finish what I was saying. I don't think it actually matters. And for this reason, at the last general election, Nigel stood down all the Brexit candidates against all the Conservatives because he didn't want to risk Corbyn. Now, maybe we could, had we stood, have taken some of those marginal seats. The likelihood is we would simply have sent them to the nearest opponent. But we might just have taken some of those seats. What we were never going to do was to form a majority, and that was at the back of Nigel's thinking. Now, I'm being very realistic. I really would love a new party of genuine Conservatives, low tax, small state, making the most of Brexit, strong defence, strong law and order, low immigration, all those things I would like to see. And I do believe it's perfectly possible for the Conservatives to do that. But for a small party to come from nowhere and do it, I don't want to be a wet blanket. But I actually, in all reality, think it's unlikely in the near future.
Godfrey, let's talk about this possible threat to the Conservative Party at the next election from smaller parties of the right. Do you agree with Anne, or do you think that actually the likes of Richard Tice could keep Rishi Sunak out of number 10?
Well, I totally agree with Anne. I was a founder member virtually of UKIP. It took us 20 years to build UKIP. It took us 20 years of hard work and delivering leaflets and knocking on doors. And most of the time, it looked absolutely impossible that we could do it. And we got the referendum, and we won the referendum, or the people, the people who wanted to leave won it. We all got together on that, and that was good. But as Anne says, you can't build these parties overnight. And of course, it's very tribal. For example, there are constituencies in this country where if people didn't vote Conservative, I live in one, Howden and Holderness. People here, they think they didn't vote Conservative, their hand would simply drop off. if they went into the booth and voted for anybody but the Conservative Party. It's totally tribal. It almost doesn't matter how bad these Conservatives are or how unconservative they are. They will always have that core vote. And of course, we talk about left and right, which I think is a little bit passé. What we're talking about here is the left are also homeless. Where is the old Labour Party? You'll be talking to John Mann later on. Yeah. That was old Labour. Nobody's sticking up for the English indigenous working man. Never mind the English middle class, small business people. Nobody's standing up for anybody who is a good, honest British citizen. They've been abandoned. Look at this. We're sending money to the Ukraine. We're sending £1 billion a month in foreign aid. We've got index-linked public sector pensions. We've got nearly 1,000 quangos. You know, the budget that Hunt was just talking about was a disaster. He's increasing our tax almost exactly the same amount he's increasing it by. He's sending abroad. He's sending it abroad. It's scandalous. He should be in the Tower of London. This isn't a clever budget. This isn't an austerity budget. HR2 is 100 billion a year. That's still going on. These people have absolutely no idea how to run an economy. They're hopeless. But of course, we don't run ourselves anymore. We've got to admit that we don't run ourselves anymore. This is a World Economic Forum. It's globalism. They all have the same phrases, build back better, etc., etc., etc. Parliament is mute. The House of Lords is mute. Even now, sadly, we have a monarch who is on the side of WEF. This is a tragedy, and it's not going to get better anytime soon.
Well, look, obviously, many would question where the evidence is that Rishi Sunak is somehow a globalist puppet. But I will say, Godfrey, you're not the only one to take that view. What seems very clear, Anne, is that the Tories at the moment are in the hands of the Tory wets, who, of course, Margaret Thatcher battled in the 80s, the left of the party. Do you think that the Tories can change and be more robust on Brexit and illegal immigration, or are they now institutionally left-wing?
Oh, they've been institutionally left-wing ever since David Cameron. And we had that very brief period when we had Boris and then we had Liz Truss, when it looked as if we were going in a slightly different direction. But I mean, you know, David Cameron was perfectly happy with the Lib Dem coalition that you know, he was part of. And he was perfectly happy with that. And he would have been perfectly happy for it to continue on. So don't talk as if, you know, the takeover by the Tory wets is something new. It's been going on for years, which is why we haven't resolutely repelled all the woke stuff. It's all part of that. And of course, what we're now seeing is the triumph of the Remainers. It's people who want to get us back into the EU, understand that they can't do it just like that, but who want to start the building blocks of that path. And what we need to make sure is that the entire Red Wall understands that, you know, all the seats there will be lost if it actually rows back on Brexit. I mean, it's bad enough they've rowed back on every other promise that they made in the manifesto, and I buy entirely. But, you know, we had COVID and we had an emergency, and now we've got Ukraine. And by the way, I disagree with Godfrey. We must send money abroad to Ukraine. We have an interest in what happens with Russia and Ukraine. We have a very serious interest in it. So I think we have to do that. But that much said, Liz Truss, she bungled the delivery completely and probably deserved what came. But nevertheless, she was speaking Tory. You know, you make the country attractive to investment. You compete with the EU. You free up people's money so that they can decide what to do with it. You make it worthwhile setting up enterprises. You make it worthwhile other people coming abroad to work here. You don't do that by sending out a message, come to Britain and be taxed to the eyeballs.
Anne Widdecombe, that's the best monologue we've had on this show for a long, long time. My deep thanks to Anne, who returns in a week's time, and wonderful to welcome Godfrey Bloom back to the show, former UKIP MEP and dropper of truth bombs. What's your reaction? Mark at gbnews.uk. Coming up after 10, my Mark Meets guest is Brexit supporting former Labour MP, very much the voice of common sense within the Labour Party, hugely respected, Lord John Mann, who conducted a war against Jeremy Corbyn and won. Plus, we've got the papers at 10:30 with full panel reaction. But next, one of the most highly regarded and successful managers of his generation. And of course, former England head coach Sam Allardyce is next.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. There's never been a more interesting but also critical time in British politics, and I can't wait to bring you the biggest stories of the day with the best factual accuracy and also a few of my own opinions thrown in. We'll engage in passionate but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12 on TV, on radio and online.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something weird happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky. That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg. And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak.
Stop talking. My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Well, the Football World Cup in Qatar kicked off this afternoon after 12 years of controversy since the Gulf nation was awarded the competition. The hosts lost 2-0 to Ecuador in the opening game. England kick off their tournament tomorrow afternoon against Iran. Wales face the USA in their first World Cup for 64 years. And the Prime Minister is even getting in the mood. Take a look. I quite like that. Anyway, come on England and come on Wales. Joining me now to discuss England and Wales's prospects this year is one of the most highly regarded and successful managers of his generation, and of course, former England head coach as well, Sam Allardyce. Evening, Gaffer.
Good evening.
Absolute privilege to have you on the show. I'll start with an easy one, Sam. Can England win the World Cup?
Yes, I think they can. I think we're all looking forward to it, even though last They had a difficult time in the Nations Cup, and I think that now that's over. I think that after the last World Cup, the Euro Championships, this squad and the manager and his coaching staff have enough experience to take us all the way this time. Whether we'll win it or not, obviously, when we get there, that's a different matter. But certainly, I think they've got the capabilities and now the talent and the experience, both in the backroom staff and in the squad.
What's your appraisal, Sam, of the mentality of the team? We know the talent's there, but what about their frame of mind?
Well, I think the frame of mind should be very, very good based on its international football and not what's happened in the Premier League and not what's happened to them before that. I think that they know that in the last two big major competitions in the world, they've done absolutely beyond expectation. So this time that brings a little bit more pressure. That's absolutely certain about that. But they got to accept that pressure and they got to use it in a positive manner and go out there and prove that they can go all the way again and this time try and win it.
Sam, will the hot climate be a factor for our British players?
Well, I've arrived back from Dubai, Mark, so it's about 28 degrees. And of course, that means that it has eased off a huge amount. So I think the temperature is not enough to worry the players. And of course, the sports science team behind the England squad have enough idea in terms of mixing up their nutrition, their fluids, their electrolytes. So I think that side of it will be absolutely fine. I think what is maybe a problem is a little bit of mental fatigue with the amount of pressure they've had on with the games they played last summer and, of course, playing in the Premier League. That's left them not too much time to rest up to go into this massive tournament.
What's your view, Sam, of the World Cup taking place in Qatar? I think we've lost the line to Big Sam. What an absolute hero.
Repeat that, please.
Oh, Sam, you're back. Sorry, we just lost you for a second. What do you think about Qatar being the hosts this year, Sam?
Well, I think we'd have all preferred that it wasn't there, but I mean, we're never going to change it. It is what it is. I mean, listen, I've worked in being sports, so I can't be a hypocrite and start criticising that. But you know, we have the golf, we have the football, we have the boxing. You know, we have the Formula One, who all compete. We have this, who all compete out in those countries now. So yes, you know, we can talk about it. Yes, we've got to try and use it to see if we can help them change somewhat, and I think they will. But you have to, you know, admire them for the amount of money they spent. I mean, 120 billion and absolutely fabulous stadiums, and hopefully a trouble-free World Cup, particularly with the fans having to behave themselves. And I'm not just talking about the England fans; I'm talking about all fans.
Sam, Gary Lineker and also Gary Neville and David Beckham have received criticism for going to this tournament and, in Beckham's case, being the face of Qatar. Do they deserve the criticism that they're receiving?
I think when it comes to football, it's always criticised more than any other sport. I mean, I pointed out that, you know, people like Lewis Hamilton on go win the Formula One and earn 40, 50 million or 60, 70 million, whatever he earns. The tennis players, the golf, look at Live Golf. I think the last Live Golf from the winner was $60 million or something like that. So yes, it's difficult. The boxing, what did they earn? 80 million each in the last boxing match. You know, so it is what it is. We either accept it and move on and continue to try and change it, of course. But, you know, we have to accept these countries pay a lot of money to get the best sports and, of course, the best entertainers in the world in their countries, because they're trying to change. They're trying to entice us more to go to these countries. And, of course, at the moment, they're doing a pretty good job of it.
Two more quick ones for you, Gaffer, before you go. Their first World Cup game since 1958. How far can Wales go?
Well, listen, I'm not. I want them to do exceptionally well. You know, I want them to try and, you know, beat the USA, isn't it? I think in the first game, and that'll give them a huge amount of confidence. And that man who's on your screen now will be the absolute key to that. You keep him fit, you keep him on top of his game. You've got to the World Cup, and let's hope you can go a lot farther. Let's hope you can try and get out those group stages. And of course, it's the same with England. It looks easy for England, but I think no World Cup game is easy. You've got to concentrate and make sure you do the job, particularly in the group stages.
Sam, you're one of my absolute football and sporting heroes. A privilege to have you on the programme. And I believe you'll be joining us in a week's time to check in on England and Wales's progress. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And just one note. I hope those Tories sort it out, because they're absolutely getting on my nerves, by the way. What an absolute shambles.
We'll talk about that next week as well. Put Big Sam in charge of England. He'll get us up. Thank you, Sam. We'll see you in a week's time.
Thank you.
And well done to producer Greg for a cracking booking. All the big names speak to Mark Dolan tonight. Coming up next, after 10, my Mark Meets guest is Brexit-supporting former Labour MP Lord John Mann, who conducted a war against Jeremy Corbyn and won. But next up with my brilliant panel, are Labour right to scrap the House of Lords? We'll find out why it matters to you next.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio
and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Steyn. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Welcome back to Mark Dolan Tonight. Coming up in my Take at 10 at the top of the next hour, I'll be responding to the news that Donald Trump is back on Twitter and he's annoying all of the right people. But with me now, reacting to the big stories of the day, my fabulous panel of Emma Webb, UK Director of the Common Sense Society, was not to like, former Gurkha officer and best-selling author Adrian Hayes, and Britain's longest-serving political editor Nigel Nelson. Great to have all three of you with me. Now, the Labour leader Keir Starmer has announced plans for a new elected chamber to replace the House of Lords. This is all part of the party's bid to what they describe as restore trust in politics and stop what they call lackeys and donors from becoming peers. But is this the right move? Are Labour right to scrap the House of Lords? Nigel?
No. And the problem really is that our constitution has kind of evolved. It's not like France or America or Russia, where there's a violent revolution. We've done it through evolution. Mm-hmm. And if you start tinkering around with the constitution, there are unintended consequences. There was a fantastic report about this, about the idea of reform by John Wakeham, the former Tory cabinet minister. And what he said is that the Lords is completely bonkers in the
on paper.
Yeah, on the 21st century. The idea you've got 26 clerics who become legislators as of right makes us look more like Iran than a Western nation. However, the point he was making was, if you start taking these various bricks of the Constitution away, so say, for instance, you threw the bishops out, would that, because that is their link with the state, would that end up with the church disestablishing? Mm-hmm. And if that happened, would we not start thinking about the monarchy? Yeah. Given that the king is the head of the church, that you take a plank of his basic function away. And so Wakeham's point was not that all these things would happen, but the moment you start fiddling with it, it might happen, and we could end up without a monarchy.
Yes, Emma, do you think that awarding peerages has been abused, and is that why the House of Lords has been brought into disrepute?
Well, I think part of it was that, as you say, our constitution has evolved over time. I agree with everything that you've said there, and that we brought in this system of appointing people, and so actually the people in the House of Lords who are elected are the hereditary peers who are elected there by the other peers, and so. I think that is part of the problem, the choices of who gets appointed, of course. But I agree that you shouldn't start meddling with these constitutional things. We keep seeing this, that these dramatic constitutional changes are getting bandied about by all sorts of people, left, right and centre, with no real appreciation for the gradual development of these institutions through our constitutional history. And I actually think that this is something that, and I imagine that many viewers will feel that this chimes with them, that our institutions, like the monarchy, the House of Lords, inspire a feeling amongst people, a feeling of affection, because they are our institutions. And that's one of the reasons why I think that people really will not be, unless they are radical Republicans, I don't think there will be many people who will want to get on board with this idea of abolishing the House of Lords. And of course, if you follow the logic of having started by appointing people and moving away from hereditary peerages, of course it ends up tending in the direction of having an elected House. But that is a dramatic constitutional change. And I agree, I think that ends up with the disestablishment of the church, and then that brings the monarchy into question, because the establishment of the church and the monarchy are two interdependent aspects of our constitution.
And the hereditary peers were only kept there on the basis that because the monarchy is hereditary. So you had to keep that principle going in the House of Lords.
This is Chesterton's fence. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But if you don't know why that fence is there, you don't move it until you know, you know? So it's a very delicate constitutional ecosystem, and we shouldn't be messing with it.
But don't you think it is broken? I think the whole honours system is an utter embarrassment to this country. The whole peerage, knighthoods are given out on the cornflakes, peerages, cash for honours. The whole system is a farce. Having said that...
Bang goes your OBE.
There's no chance of that. Not now. But having said that, I do agree with tampering with our constitution as a delicate thing. I also think just because something's bad doesn't mean the replacement is any better. Look at Saddam Hussein in Iraq. And the third thing, is it the most important thing on the agenda right now? Probably not. But I do think it needs a reform. If not abolishing it, does need a serious reform. And stop this ex-prime minister's honours and all the things, because it's becoming a farce.
Isn't this a cheap headline-grabbing gimmick from Keir Starmer, given that we're battling a cost of living crisis?
Well, he did promise this. I mean, the trouble is, every Labour leader has a go at this. Tony Blair did the same thing and never achieved it. Keir Starmer made a promise when he became leader. It would be one of the things he would do. I doubt very much he'll get around to it either.
Interesting stuff. What do you think? Do we still need the House of Lords? Mark at gbnews.uk. Now, I'm very excited because in the next hour, my Mark Meets guest is the man that took on Jeremy Corbyn and won. Lord John Mann is live in the studio. Labour MP, of course, a big supporter of Brexit. I'll ask him how he thinks that is going. And in my take at 10, Donald Trump's return to Twitter is annoying all of the right people. You either believe in free speech or you don't. Plus, we've got tomorrow's papers live and uninterrupted at 10:30 with full panel reactions. So much to get through. See you shortly.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for the briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, the briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. There's never been a more interesting but also critical time in British politics, and I can't wait to bring you the biggest stories of the day with the best factual accuracy and also a few of my own opinions thrown in. We'll engage in passionate but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12 on TV, on radio and online.
Are Labour right to want to abolish the House of Lords? That's been a big topic with my panel. Strong reaction on email, mark at gbnews.uk. John says, Mark, do we need an elected House of Lords? After all, we've got an elected House of Commons, and look at their track record. And this explosive stuff from Marion, who says, Mark, on the point of abolishing the House of Lords, Labour are absolutely right. The young complain about the baby boomers generation getting a small pension rise and how the young are having to do without. If we abolish the House of Lords, think of all the millions we would save. instead of paying all these geriatrics to sit half comatose in Parliament. It's a disgrace that has to stop now. Marion, thank you for that. Keep those emails coming. It's exactly 10 o'clock, and this is Mark Dolan Tonight. My Mark Meets guest is Brexit-supporting former Labour MP John Mann. He's live in the studio. He opposed Jeremy Corbyn, and he's got quite the story to tell as he now sits in the House of Lords. In the news agenda with my panel, as comedian Joe Lycett is shredding £10,000 in part of an online stunt. Is he wrong to do that during a cost of living crisis? And can you trust a man who wears shorts in the winter? It's good enough for my postman, Steve. Do you wear shorts in the winter? Let me know, mark@gbnews.uk. I'm happy to run some photos if you've got any. Plus, we've got tomorrow's papers at exactly 10:30. But after this, my take at 10. Donald Trump is back on Twitter and he's annoying all the right people. I'm sorry, folks, but free speech is non-negotiable. Find out more after the headlines with Rhiannon Jones.
Mark, thank you. Your top stories from the GB newsroom. England manager Gareth Southgate has confirmed his players will take the knee before their World Cup opener against Iran tomorrow. The tournament kicked off today with the hosts Qatar beaten 2-0 by Ecuador. It's the first time the event's been held in a Muslim country in the Middle East, and the build-up's been overshadowed by a number of controversies. The Football Association's trying to get clarification over whether captains will be booked if they wear the One Love armband. 9 countries, including England and Wales, had planned to wear it to promote diversity and inclusion. Wales join England in kicking off their campaign tomorrow against the USA. It's their first World Cup appearance in 64 years. Captain Gareth Bale says he hopes his team's achievement will inspire a generation. GB News spoke to Welsh fans in Qatar about what it means to them.
It's crazy. I mean, 64 years and we've finally made it in. I feel like this is one of our last opportunities, really, of this, taking the most out of this generation of players, so really excited.
You ever think you'd see this day?
No.
Yeah. Never felt prouder to be Welsh and be here.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can't. Yeah, we hope, though, that we really do hope that Wales do beat England.
Well, it wasn't a great start for some fans. Ahead of kick-off tonight, there were chaotic scenes at the FIFA Fan Festival. The venue can hold up to 40,000 people, but at least double tried to gain access. And for a while, organisers were letting in too many people into the holding area. It took police around an hour to get frustrated supporters back out of the venue. And some news just in. A 31-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of murder following the death of 2 young children in a flat fire in Nottingham. Fire and rescue were called to an address at Fairarl Close in Clifton in the early hours of this morning. The children, aged 1 and 3, were treated at the scene for smoke inhalation but later died in hospital. A woman in her 30s remains in a critical condition. And in the US, the governor of Colorado has described a shooting in a gay nightclub in which 5 people were killed and 18 injured, a senseless act of evil. Police say the suspect, 22-year-old Anderson Lee Aldridge, opened fire and that several people risked their own lives trying to stop him. He's currently in custody and receiving treatment for his injuries. The motive for the attack is not yet known. TV online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Mark Dolan Tonight.
My thanks to the brilliant Rhiannon Jones, who returns in an hour's time. Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. Big stories, big guests, and always big opinions. In the news agenda with my panel, was comedian Joe Lycett wrong to shred £10,000 during a cost of living crisis? It was all part of an internet stunt, but is it the wrong look as people are struggling to pay their bills? And can you trust a man who wears shorts in the winter? We'll discuss that burning topic later. Plus tomorrow's papers at exactly 10:30 sharp with full panel reaction. Tonight, I'm delighted to welcome Emma Webb, UK Director of the Common Sense Society, Britain's longest-serving political editor, Nigel Nelson, and former Gurkha officer and best-selling author, Adrian Hayes. Plus, my Mark Meets guest is Brexit-supporting former Labour MP John Mann. Lots to get through. He's in the studio shortly, but first, it's time for my Take at 10. The return of Donald Trump to Twitter is annoying all of the right people. As the world's first orange president returns to this social media platform, it's a victory for him, a victory for his supporters, and most importantly, a victory for free speech. Because you can love Donald Trump or you can hate him, but free speech is non-negotiable. It doesn't come with terms and conditions. The late, great Winston Churchill, as always, put it perfectly. He said everyone is in favour of free speech. Hardly a day goes by without it being extolled. But some people's idea of free speech is that they are free to say what they like, but if anyone else says anything back, that is an outrage. So true. The ridiculous overreach of the tech censors in America, who are highly politically motivated, is demonstrated by the fact that the Russian government, the Iranian regime, and the Taliban, no less, have Twitter accounts, whilst the previous incumbent of the White House, Donald Trump, a man who has never started a single war, unlike many of his predecessors, lay in digital exile. Over the last couple of years, tech censorship has got so bad. Unelected, out-of-touch, US-based, hoodie-wearing billionaires have been imposing their politics on the world. Whether we like it or not, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and others are now the new town square. And we've seen debate stifled at a critical time in human history. Take Twitter, for example, permanently suspending a journalist called Alex Berenson. And this was for his tweets about COVID lockdowns and the vaccine, which did not fit the narrative and which did not make for pretty reading. His tweets about COVID measures and the jab were truly shocking and highly controversial. How could such dangerous misinformation be allowed on Twitter? He was, of course, suspended from the platform for life. Well, Alex Berenson, like so many heroes of history, knew that he had right on his side. He took Twitter to court and demonstrated that all of those controversial, shocking and outrageous tweets were him simply sharing official government data. He was quite simply publishing the facts, for which he was cancelled. Well, he stood up to the censorious scumbags in Silicon Valley and he won. It's not up to woke billionaires in San Francisco or Palo Alto to frame the parameters of free speech. The ability to express your view, however unfashionable or unpalatable, is sacred to Western values and the foundation of our great democracies. Anything within the law is fair game. Knock yourself out. Countless brave men and women have fought and died for freedom of speech, which is why I won't stand by as it gets pickpocketed by a narcissistic 20-something in California, deciding what's acceptable and what isn't. So welcome back, Donald. I'm already looking forward to those late-night tweets in capital letters. Keep doing what you do best, tapping out your opinions on a computer and triggering the world. After all, the keyboard is mightier than the sword. Reacting to that and tomorrow's papers live at 10:30 is my all-star panel. I'm delighted to welcome so many fabulous figures. We've got Emma Webb, we've also got Nigel Nelson and Adrian Hayes. Brilliant stuff. Let me start with you, if I can, Emma, because you are very involved in, I think, the UK director of the Common Sense Society. Was it common sense reinstating Donald Trump?
Oh, yes. And also as formerly the Deputy Research Director of the Free Speech Union, I'm very pleased to see what has been a clear pushback against, as you were describing there, Mark, tech censorship, big tech censorship. And I think you hit on a really important point there, which is about misinformation. You know, who is the arbitrator of what counts as misinformation? We saw this during COVID with YouTube removing videos that counted as misinformation. And a lot of those things turned out in the end to be true. So I think that this is fantastic news. A good move from Emperor Elon, who actually did this democratically. He did this with a Twitter poll asking whether or not Trump should be reinstated. He won. He did reinstate him. And I think that it was absurd that Donald Trump was removed from the platform in the first place. In terms of free speech, I agree with you, Mark. I think anything, short of incitement, should be fair game. And it's important that these platforms are the public square, that everybody should be able to air their opinion. And somebody like Donald Trump is a very important figure in American politics. And it's important that his opinion isn't censored on platforms that have so many users as Twitter.
Nigel Nelson, it's not about liking Donald Trump. That's not the point, is it?
No, it's not. But we have to be... When Emma was talking about anything short of incitement, that is exactly what Donald Trump was removed from Twitter for. That he was accused of inciting violence. And so the rules that apply to anybody else should actually apply to Donald Trump. And the idea of actually doing a poll to decide whether he comes back, especially on Twitter, seems to be nonsense. I mean, Elon Musk himself accepts that an awful lot of the voters were actually bots who were just generating traffic. So I'm not too fussed about Donald Trump being back on Twitter. I do think, though, the rules should apply to him, and it was right to actually remove him when he did. And certainly, free speech is a really important thing to have, but but equally, there are caveats to that in the sense that free speech has to be responsible speech.
But Nigel Nelson, that he incited the attack on the Capitol is a matter of opinion, and it certainly shouldn't be the matter of opinion of a 20-something in an office in California.
No, I mean, I agree with that it was certainly, it was Twitter's opinion rather than something that where Donald Trump had broken the law. But that was the rules that Twitter imposed, that if you don't like the rules that they have, don't go on Twitter. And the point I'm making there is that given that those rules existed, Donald Trump breached them, somebody else would have been thrown off for doing the same thing, and so should he have been.
Well, Adrian Hayes, what do you think? You're a former military man, and as I mentioned in my monologue, people have fought and died to preserve our freedoms, including freedom of speech. Is Donald Trump's restoration to Twitter an example of just that?
I always pinch myself every Remembrance Sunday. They die for our freedoms, and yet we've been so willing to give these away in the last few years. Look, I think I agree with Nigel. Actually, having a Twitter poll whether you should reinstate Donald Trump or not was a bit bizarre. It's about perhaps a good representation of society's views as recent YouGov polls. But I must admit, I felt when Trump was banned from Twitter, and it was banned for life, remember, I felt very uneasy. And I'm no cheerleader for Donald Trump, but I just thought you're banning a former president on the very loose connection that he incited violence. So I disagree, Nigel, perhaps on that one. And I think the whole point, this story is not about Donald Trump. It's about, as you said in your monologue, Mark, it's about big tech corporations being censors of free speech in society. I believe big tech and social media companies are completely out of control. And who are they, unelected officials or unelected 20-year-olds in an office in California to decide what we should read or not read? We're all big boys and girls. We can decide for ourselves what's misinformation, disinformation. And this is where I've got a very big problem. It's a different subject about the so-called online safety bill, which is also censorship in any name. But yes, so it's not about Trump. It's about censorship, free speech, and about letting all of us choose what we can read and not read.
Emma Webb, Nigel Nelson and Adrian Hayes return at exactly 10:30 sharp for tomorrow's papers. Looking forward to that. Also in the news agenda with my panel, was comedian Joe Lycett wrong to shred £10,000 as part of an online stunt during a cost of living crisis? And can you trust a man who wears shorts in the winter? Lots to get through, but fully clothed, including long trousers, my Mark Meets guest next is Brexit-supporting former Labour MP John Mann, who's in the House of Lords now. He's in the studio. Lots of questions. See you in 3.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory. Twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me!
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
A big reaction on email to the big talking points of the day. Donald Trump is back on Twitter. Is that good news for free speech? That's the theme of my Take at 10, which Ben from our digital team is currently crafting into a clip. If you missed my big opinion at the start of the show and this suggestion that the Tories are trying to reverse Brexit, well, that's at our Twitter handle at GB News right now. But let's get to your emails, mark@gbnews.uk. And Dave on Donald Trump says, Mark, the inciting of violence on the Capitol riots. Nigel, your guest, needs to read the pre-suspension script. Dave is pretty much sticking up for Donald Trump there. Chris says, hi, Mark. Trump's tweets about January the 6th are available to see, and they are all about being peaceful and respecting the boys in blue. How that incites violence beats me. Well, here's a great one for you for later in the show. Do you trust a man who wears shorts in the winter? This from SB, who says, anyone over the age of 10 who wears shorts needs help. There you go. Thank you very much for that. To the point. It's time now for this. I could be wearing shorts, couldn't I, under this desk? You'd never know. It is time now for Mark Meets, in which I speak to the biggest names in the world of politics, showbiz, sport, business and beyond. Tonight, one of the most respected Labour Party figures of recent years. A man who backed Brexit but opposed Jeremy Corbyn and who has since, leaving the Commons, been appointed the government's advisor on anti-Semitism. A former MP and now a member of the House of Lords, John Mann. Let's take a look at when Lord Mann confronted former Labour Mayor of London, Ken Livingstone, following allegations of anti-Semitism.
A lying racist.
Really? Why don't you go and check
a Nazi apologist. A Nazi apologist.
Check your history.
A Nazi apologist. You're a disgusting Nazi apologist, Livingstone. Go back and check what Hitler did. Go back and check what Hitler did. There's a book called Mein Kampf. You've obviously never heard of it. Written in 1925. Yes, you've never read it. And you dare say that Hitler supported Zionism. You've lost it, mate. You need help. You need help. You need help.
And I'm delighted to say Lord John Mann joins me now. Hello, John.
Good evening to you, Matt.
You don't pull your punches, especially when it's a cause about which you're passionate.
Well, sometimes you have to say what you think, and when the opportunity arises, you should do so. Though I must, of course, apologise for swearing. And that's a terrible thing to do.
Yes. Well,
my mother would not have been happy.
Well, look, I mean,
swearing,
in terms of the time of day, you're fine. You're post-watershed. But do you have any regrets about the way you conducted yourself in that exchange?
None whatsoever. Absolutely none. I said what I thought needed to be said, and cameras happened to be there. There is this kind of mythology that you can just whistle and get a camera crew. I wish it was that easy, and that I'd organised this. No, I just happened to bump into him, and he'd said some things I thought were unacceptable, and there was a chance just to put him right. He didn't want to debate.
Why do some aspects of the left have such an issue with anti-Semitism? What's going on? What's behind that?
It's deep-rooted in people's psyche, in their heads, and they buy into some of the conspiracy theories that things are wrong, someone's to blame. Who? Well, the Jews, and it's been going on for a long time. And don't forget, some people will say, well, the Jews killed Jesus. Not quite true. Correct. Rather misses the point of who Jesus was.
It's not the best counter-argument, is it?
But that's been around a long time.
Yeah.
And it gets in deep. And in this country, Jewish people have been quite successful, academically, for example, in science, in business, and have generally done well. And that's found it... People on the left found that much easier, therefore, to separate out the Jews for abuse. And it needs calling out. And I would do it if someone abused you or anybody else. And I'll do it if anyone is abusing our Jewish community.
And do you think the mainstream Labour Party has now been rid of the ghost of anti-Semitism?
Yes, it has. I mean, it was going to be easy, in my view. I always thought it would be easy, because most of them ran away, back out of the Labour Party, the people who'd come in who weren't there before, and the hardcore who were there before, I mean, they've been broken. And for Keir Starmer, it's very easy to sort out your own party. Leader of the opposition doesn't run the country, therefore he can't make the big decisions, he can only oppose what the government does. Here's his chance to prove himself, and I'm not the slightest bit surprised he's grabbed that with some glee and said, I can sort the Labour Party out. There is a problem, and I will sort it, and I'm having these people out. And we found it very, very easy to get rid of them.
You were no fan of Jeremy Corbyn. How much damage has he done to the Labour Party?
Well, he virtually destroyed the Labour Party in the sense that, I mean, I warned the moment he stood, and I told all those against him that this man could win if you're not careful. They didn't listen to me. I could see where his popularity came from. Simplistic politics, simple ideas, and not explaining how you're actually going to deliver it, which is what he did, has an appeal. And they didn't counter the danger of him.
So he was as much of a populist as the likes of Donald Trump?
Absolutely, absolutely. He was another version of Trump, different politics, but going for the easy stuff. And as Trump found, Trump's big problem was he couldn't actually deliver stuff. He was good on the rhetoric, good on the big picture. But, where's the wall he was going to build? It's not there. Hasn't done it. Hasn't changed things. And that was the Corbyn problem. And I'd seen him, known him, and I knew his politics. Bad for the Labour Party, catastrophic for the Labour Party's election chances, and no surprise that Labour bounces back when Labour moves towards the centre, towards normality, trying to take the British people with the Labour Party rather than spitting at the Labour Party and saying, here's what you should be doing.
Can Keir Starmer win an overall majority at the next election?
Well, it'd be difficult. Statistically, in politics, my rule number one, learn to count. If you go to a meeting, know how many votes you've got. If you go into an election, know how difficult it is. It'll be very difficult to get a majority. But the Conservatives, I saw a poll this weekend, 21%. I don't think it's ever been that low. The Conservative Party is imploding. It's been in power for a long time. It's got two wings, the pro-European wing, people like Jeremy Hunt, the anti-European wing, who are the majority. They're at war. And that war is not going to go away. And the only way they will solve that and work out what they really stand for is by being in opposition. And some of them privately say it'll probably be healthy to have a few years in opposition. They don't want too many. But that's what I think is likely to happen, the way things are going. They almost can't help themselves in their civil war.
And do you think Starmer's got the chops to be a great Prime Minister? Is he Tony Blair 2.0?
He could be. I mean, until September, I thought, well, where is it? Where is the punch? But I've seen a different person since September. Almost literally, he's grown. And I saw that with Blair. I remember when Blair was Bambi. I knew him. And the Bambi thing was the way he moved, the way he held himself. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, within about 2 months, he physically grew. He realised he could be Prime Minister. Beginning to see that with Starmer. Now, there's still a way to go, but he's acting like a man who could be Prime Minister. And the people will notice that. And so he's much more dangerous to the Tory party than he was in the summer and before the summer.
Do you not find him, he's clearly a bright guy, but do you not find him pompous and a bit woke, a bit PC, very virtue signalling?
I find him very London. And if he doesn't spend a majority of his time outside London, he won't win. So if he's listening in, my advice to him, Sir Keir, is get yourself out of London, get around the country, not just quick visits, but lots of time listening and understanding the people who don't live in London, who have a different perspective on life to you, who live differently to you, perhaps even different values in their everyday life. Not core values like, do they want an NHS? Do they want good schools? Do they want the economy to do well? No, they'd all say yes to that, and so would he. But the bits that are harder to get, if he goes out there and does that, I think he's not against Boris Johnson this time, who was very good at that. He's against Rishi Sunak, who's unproven in that. And we've got two unproven leaders in how they manage to engage the people. So if I was Starmer, I would get out of London most of the time.
I think that's good advice, because if Keir Starmer had spent time outside of London post-referendum, he might not have crafted a policy as Shadow Brexit Secretary to reverse the decision. You backed Brexit. Any buyer's regret?
None at all. I mean, what we should be doing, I'm a bit perplexed. I saw a fellow Lord Frost, seems to be attacking what's happening with Brexit all the time. Look, Brexit's done. What we need to do is grab the opportunities that Brexit gives. And the biggest opportunity is energy. Do we want to rely on the Russians for gas? I've been saying for years, no, we don't. Or the Chinese for coal, or the French for nuclear power. Do we trust them on stability, on price, on actually giving us the energy? No. Produce our own. Protect those industries, grow the new industries, lead the way. And, I hear this green agenda. I'm interested in the economic agenda that comes from that. The electric car. It's pretty obvious to me that at some stage we'll all be driving electric cars. We should lead the way in making them, because we'll get more jobs, we'll make profits. That's what we should be doing with Brexit, rebuilding our industrial base and not having the open competition, the rules of the EU that made that much harder. Rebuild the economic manufacturing base of Britain. That's what I voted for, and I think most Brexit voters, and most of the country actually, even the Remainers, would see that as a good thing.
We need a part 2. Will you return?
I'll be here.
Definitely. Look forward to it. Fascinating conversation. Lord John Mann, thank you so much for joining us. Next up, the papers with full panel reaction.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV.
On radio.
And online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something weird happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky. That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg. And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak. Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Cracking interview with Lord John Mann. Props to producer Maria for another stellar booking. By the way, let me tell you about Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In. Every Saturday, the show's bigger now. It's XL. It's 3 hours from 8. The first hour is dedicated to your video calls. So if you'd like to be a star on the show, drop me an email now, mark@gbnews.uk, and we'll put you on the show. That's the People's Hour, 8 till 9 every Saturday night. And we'll be doing it again in 6 days' time. Let's have a look now at tomorrow's papers, hot off the press, and we'll start with The Telegraph. And they have cancer toll surges in wake of pandemic. Hundreds more than expected dying each week after missed diagnoses during COVID. The cost of the pandemic for cancer sufferers is beginning to emerge, experts fear, as figures show that hundreds more people than expected are now dying each month in England from the disease. Charities and health experts are calling on the government to take action, warning that misdiagnoses during lockdown may be a factor and that the problem is being compounded by the NHS crisis. Since the beginning of September, there have been nearly 900 more deaths in people with cancer than would be expected at this time of year. Sunak totally rejects Swiss-style Brexit deal with the EU. There you go. He's killed the story, folks. Rishi Sunak has insisted that a Swiss-style Brexit deal with the European Union is off the table as he moved to quell a backlash among Tory MPs. Number 10 sources rejected as categorically untrue a suggestion by senior government figures that bespoke Swiss-style trading agreements with the EU could be sought. How about this, which is act like a woman to climb the career ladder. Professionals looking to get ahead should act like a woman, the president of the Girls' School Association has said. Heather Hanbury argued that being an empathetic team player was better for business than the alpha male model of leadership. Oh, bang goes my career then. How about the Daily Express? Come on, England, put a smile on our faces. The heroic England. By the way, is Harry Kane the England captain as well?
Yes.
He is, isn't he? Yeah, and of course, Spurs captain. I'm very... he's not the Spurs captain. The Spurs captain is the goalkeeper. It's good that I don't talk about football, isn't it? I'll leave that to producer Greg. Fury at absurd idea to go soft on Brexit. Senior Tories have erupted with anger over claims that government figures are pushing for Britain to adopt a softer version of Brexit. MPs branded any idea of a Switzerland agreement with Brussels as completely absurd, as it would tie the UK to EU laws. Ex-Minister Jacob Rees-Mogg said it would render trade deals with other countries ineffective. Jacob Rees-Mogg, by the way, a brilliant guest on last Sunday's show. Unbelievable ratings and a video that went viral, watched by just shy of 1 million people. The Times now, patients to face long NHS waits for years. Patients face long waits for ambulances and accident and emergency care for years to come, as ministers accept there is little hope of hitting key targets by the next election. Millions of fans will watch from home when millions tuned into the BBC on a Monday lunchtime for England's opening World Cup match against Tunisia in 1998. Des Lynam, with a twinkle in his eye, asked viewers, shouldn't you be at work? Well, now, a survey of 2,000 people commissioned by Road to Victory suggests that 30% will be calling in sick to watch the World Cup. Absolute disgrace. Daily Mail now. World Cup threat to England's Harry. Harry Kane, by the way, is the captain of England. He's not the captain of Spurs, that's Hugo Lloris. Harry Kane leads our bid for glory today, but will he be booked for the rainbow armband? Also, don't betray us on Brexit. Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt were tonight warned against seeking closer ties with the EU. The Sun, there he is. Harry is very much the poster boy for England's campaign. England versus Iran. Kane vows to lift the nation. Card threat over armband. Lions of Arabia is the headline. The Guardian now. Climate deal still leaves world on brink of catastrophe, experts warn. Also revealed cancelled trains hits record high. Is there any good news? Let's see if we can come up with some in a minute. The I newspaper, Tory MPs warn Sunak over Swiss deal with the EU. And hosts suffer 2-0 defeat to Ecuador as the most controversial World Cup finals finally kick off. Qatar kicks off the World Cup, a very arresting photo on the front page of The Independent. And also, no emissions deal leaves planet on life support. This as COP27 reaches its conclusion. How about the Metro now? Comics World Cup protest. Wad a waste. We'll be discussing this shortly. Comedian Joe Lycett sparked a storm by appearing to destroy £10,000 in cash as the most controversial World Cup in history kicked off in Qatar, and David Beckham ignored his demand to withdraw as its official ambassador. And last but not least, the Daily Star. Is it a bird? Is it a plane? No, it's Super Kane. He's the England captain, but not the captain of Spurs. That is Hugo Lloris. Let's hear it for England. England's World Cup campaign kicks off today with our superheroes swapping capes for 3 Lions shirts. Come on, bring it home. And listen, Faye, let's get that camera back to me, because let me just say, come on, England, and come on, Wales. Why? Because I love England, and I love Wales, because I love the United Kingdom. So, frankly, if either prevail, happy days. Right, let's get reaction now from my wonderful panel of Emma Webb, Nigel Nelson, and Adrian Hayes. And look, let's start, shall we, with this awful story, Adrian, on the front page of The Telegraph. Cancer toll surges in the wake of the pandemic. Many top medics warned that we risked this kind of medical backlog with the policy of lockdowns, including the highly regarded oncologist, the positive Professor Carol Sikora.
Look, cancer is a disease. I study it a lot. I've been involved with cancer charities. The stats are horrendous. 1 in 2 of us will get cancer in our lifetimes. The disease is out of control. Now, why it is, that's another subject we won't go into today, but
crap nutrition.
Well, I think we've been poisoned from the water, air, all the additives, chemicals in our food.
We live in a very toxic environment, don't we?
We do. This is why, I try and eat organic food as much as I can, because because it's very important to me. But however, going back to
I
the
do
actual...
think when I'm a bit older, I might need one of your kidneys, I've got to say.
I don't know, yeah.
I would go for Nigel's, but he's been in Fleet Street for years, so I don't know what state
Yeah,
they're
I
in.
wouldn't have one of mine.
But yeah, it's deadly serious. You say we probably won't go into the weeds of why this awful disease is on the rise.
Let's go back to the actual, headline in the Telegraph. Look, surprise, surprise. Choices and consequences. I've been saying last time I came on the show that everything we do in life, in politics and business and anything, has trade-offs. And this simple concept, there's no single solution for everything. When we went to the National COVID Service, of course we're going to get consequences, and cancer was the most obvious one. I listen to Carol all the time, and he warned it, and we did, and it's a tragedy, and it's so early diagnosis is so essential to it, and yet, of course, we've lost all that. But let's hope that the articles like this is highlighting the situation, and we can sort of get back on top of it.
We know about the economic price of the policy of lockdowns, and here we're discovering the health price too.
Yeah, I mean, this story makes... if I'm being completely honest, this story makes me feel sick because you look at the numbers, and these are people's loved ones. This is the real cost in terms of people's actual lives as a result of our lockdown policies. And the reason why this makes me feel so sick is because there were people who warned about this at the time. It's not just about misdiagnoses, but people who were getting pinged and therefore not being able to go and have their cancer treatment, to have their chemotherapy. So I'm worried that this is actually just the tip of the iceberg, and that the state that the NHS is currently in and how dysfunctional it is, that this is something that's going to continue for many, many years, and that in our panic over the pandemic and our desire to try and keep the death toll from, as you said, the COVID health service, in our desire to try and avoid deaths from one disease, that we've actually stocked ourselves up all sorts of trouble in the future, not just in relation to cancer, but in relation to other things as well. And this, as I say, these are people's loved ones. And there are real stories behind this.
And a good percentage of those who will have lost their lives will have been younger families and younger individuals, not the sort of the COVID focus, which is people in the vulnerable groups, normally on average a bit older. This could be a young mother who didn't have that lump in her breast detected or examined, and she has to say goodbye to her children now.
And not being able to see your doctor face to face, and the amount of time that unnecessarily went on for. And like you say, this is not the older generations. This is across the board. The stats that you were saying, this affects all of us.
And one thing the apologists say, well, it's because we're all living older. That's why cancer rates have shot through the roof. No, tell that to the 30-year-old mother who died. I've got friends, I'm sure all three of us have got friends who've died of cancer at all ages. It's a disease crisis, and it's heartbreaking seeing these casualties.
And avoidable in many cases as well, if you catch these things early, and that's the thing. They're not being caught early, clearly, because of the pandemic.
Nigel, this ties in with the story in The Times. Patients to face long NHS waits for years, ambulance and A&E targets to be watered down. Is the NHS, and I think we can all agree, the staff that work in the NHS are just world-class, the nurses, the porters, the cleaners, the doctors, quite extraordinary. But... question mark over the middle managers and the bureaucracy. But in the end, do you think now the system is irrevocably broken? Can it be? I mean, if Keir Starmer gets into number 10 in 2 years' time, which at the moment it's likely he will, can he fix this? Can anyone fix this?
Well, my view is that what you can't have is an NHS that works on the same principles as the one that was designed in 1948. I don't think the NHS is sustainable as it is at the moment. I don't think the funding out of general taxation is sustainable. And what you are going to need is root and branch reform. What I would hope
which is in a sentiment that could get you cancelled in politics, isn't it?
That's the problem. And politicians are not brave enough to say things like that. I've had private conversations with a lot of them who agree with that and say we can't carry on the way we're going. We must look at a different model for the NHS. You still have a National Health Service, but a different model for it. But they're terrified because of our sentimentality about the NHS, terrified the voters will turn against them.
Indeed. Well, look, I think it's fantastic to hear a highly respected commentator like you say it in such bold terms. And I think that whilst we, as I say, have high regard for those working in the NHS, I do think the institution needs a serious overhaul. Otherwise, lives will be lost. But what's your view? Mark at gbnews.uk. I'll get to your opinions shortly. Lots more to come from the papers. Joe Lycett, the comedian, has shredded £10,000 in an internet stunt. Was he wrong to do that during a cost of living crisis? Plus a couple of other big stories in the papers. Is it wrong to call in sick to watch the World Cup? Surely you're supporting your country. Isn't that justified? Should the boss give you the day off if England or Wales go all the way? And also, do you trust a man who wears shorts in the winter? See you shortly.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for the briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, the briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
Welcome back to Mark Dolan tonight. Lots in the papers reacting to the big stories of the day. Emma Webb, Nigel Nelson, and Adrian Hayes. Now, this is a really big story. The comedian Joe Lycett, who's a friend of mine, very talented guy, has fulfilled his promise to shred £10,000 in cash if David Beckham did not end his contract as the face of the Qatar World Cup. Here's the footage of Lycett putting the money into the shredder. He's wearing a rather fancy and glamorous outfit, which I wouldn't cook in, by the way. Certainly not a barbecue. I wouldn't go trick-or-treating in that outfit either, not near any Roman candles. It does look like the kind of thing you'd use in the shower just to clean your underarms. So look, he's he's shredding the money, and off he goes. So the video's gone viral with almost 2 million views as it stands. But was he wrong to destroy that amount of money during a cost of living crisis, Adrian?
I'm less bothered about that argument. I just think, look, I've got a bigger picture on this. I think the world is suffering an epidemic of people, social media, people-driven obsession on seeking sympathy, attention, recognition, respect, a name and fame. So sorry, Joe, this is an attention-seeking stunt, I think, more than anything else. He's made a point. I know he's passionate about it, but I just think, you know, without social media, it wouldn't have made such a big headlines as it did.
Nigel, you know about political messaging inside out. He's trying to draw attention to the plight of LGBTQ plus people in Qatar. But has this one backfired?
No, I think he did the right thing. I mean, if he'd given that money to charity, the protest doesn't work. Yeah. The whole point was this was a protest against David Beckham taking £10 million to promote Qatar. And if you think about protests, people come down to Westminster to protest against poverty. They have to spend money on coaches, on trains and things like that. Would that money be better spent on a food bank or something like that? Should they not be protesting? This was a protest. It cost £10,000. It was his money. I think it was the right thing to do.
But who is he to tell David Beckham, Emma Webb, where to make his money and how?
Well, I think when you see what the footballers have been doing, taking the knee, all of this virtue signalling, constantly publicly polishing their halos and using football as an opportunity to make all of these political messages, where do you think you end up if you start using football as a political instrument? You end up here being called out for hypocrisy when everything, therefore, in football becomes political as a result of that, because then simply going and playing in Qatar becomes a political act, a hypocritical one for all of these people who have been talking about progressive causes, and Qatar not only on homosexuality, but also their treatment of migrant workers who came to build the stadium for the Qatar World Cup. So I think the issue here is one of hypocrisy. That's the reason why I think people feel that they need to point out to these footballers, particularly someone like David Beckham, who for some reason has become a gay icon. And I think you're right. I think it's his own money. He can do with it what he wants. Who are we to tell him that he can't? And I do actually think, whilst it may be what he could have done is taken that money and given it to a charity that perhaps promotes the progressive causes
But it wouldn't
that
have
he
been the
agrees
protest
with.
Then.
But I agree with you, and that's exactly that. I agree with that completely.
What I'd say, look, I lived in the Middle East for 20-odd years. I know it very well. And look, Qatar's getting a lot of bashing right now. There are 80 countries in the world where homosexuality is illegal, and some of them are rather good friends of ours, and some of them aren't. So we have to be a bit circumspect about who we bash.
But should we allow a World Cup with an international audience be played in a country
that's a different
issue. Those 80 countries should not be able to compete for the World Cup.
That's a different issue.
But doesn't this raise a problem with the way that they're going about their virtue signalling?
Yes,
because they're willing to preach at home to audiences and to suggest that the audience is a bigots at these football matches. They're willing to do it at home where it's safe.
Yeah,
but not in a country where it's not so safe for them to do that. They would rather take the Qatari money than to actually make a real statement about it. And I think that's what Joe Lycett's trying to get at, that he's willing to take a financial knock by making this statement in a way that they wouldn't be brave enough to do in Qatar.
Well, he's got us talking, and I suppose going back to the theme of my take at 10, it's all free speech, isn't it? So good luck to him. The cryptocurrency FTX collapsed last week, losing $32 billion worth of value overnight. The youthful founder, Sam Bankman-Fried, is regularly seen in shorts, even in the winter. Alexandra Schulman, the ex-Vogue editor writing in the Mail on Sunday, said you can't trust a man who wears shorts in the winter. Well, last week, Jacob Rees-Mogg was on the show, and here's what he told me about wearing shorts. Do you ever dress down? Have you ever worn shorts?
Not since... as a child, I was forced to. I always hated wearing shorts as a child. I've never worn them in adulthood.
Oh, and I'm sure you're hiding an excellent pair of pins. I'm sure he has, I bet you. He's got excellent calf muscles. My thanks to Jacob for a brilliant interview last week. What do you think? Can you trust a man in shorts? Do you agree with Alexandra Schulman from the Daily Mail on Sunday about
I don't think you can trust them to make good fashion choices. I don't think adult males should wear shorts. I just think it's a sartorial mistake. Maybe on the beach. I mean, if you're wearing your swimming trunks, but generally, I think that it's a sartorial
I think
error.
we've got a few other sort of celebrity short wearers. Let's have a look at what we've got here. Oh dear, does my shorts fail? in midwinter, or autumn, I should say. Next up, we've got the brilliant, legendary Nigel Farage. Shorts and a glass of wine.
Shorts at home, that's different.
And by the way, what a lunchbox. I'm talking about the food behind him, of course.
I wear shorts in winter.
Oh, look at this. We've got director Sebastian rocking shorts, looking very attractive there. But is it wrong for blokes? The postmen wear it all winter, don't they?
Well, I've never seen a postal...
Donald Trump?
I've never seen a postal worker not wearing shorts. It seems to be part of the uniform, wearing shorts throughout winter.
Well,
and good for them. I wear them, and I'm going to take it very personally.
Glad to hear. Next time, I'm going to make Nigel Nelson wear shorts for the whole show.
Now
Thanks
I
to
feel so
Nigel, Emma and Adrian. We're back on Friday at 9. Stick around for headliners.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather across the UK. Icy and foggy towards the northeast, with wind and rain in the southwest. Let's take a look in more detail. A few showers for Orkney and Shetland, otherwise a mostly dry start on Monday for Scotland. Cold though, with icy patches and some fog too. Meanwhile, very wet and windy across much of Northern Ireland, with heavy rain arriving overnight. Dry across northern England. In the northwest, temperatures will be a few degrees above freezing, but in the northeast, it will be icy and foggy. North Wales is also looking dry at first. It will be rather cloudy, and further south, there will be heavy rain and very strong winds, which will spread across Wales throughout the morning. Whilst the West Midlands will get off to a mostly cloudy start, for the East Midlands, the skies will be clearer. That does mean it'll be quite chilly though, especially in rural areas. Clear and chilly across much of East Anglia. Here temperatures will be around or perhaps